Hello friends and welcome to Typically Hazardous. I am Steven and today is actually a little bit different. A couple of weeks ago, my sister and I, who you probably know, her name's the Frugal Fit Mom, Christine. I'll put a link to her channel if you're not familiar with her. We did a video together where she just brought me in and interviewed me. It was an ambush, but they kind of just wanted to ask me, why am I the way that I am? And one of the parts of that conversation turned heavily to ADD, which I was diagnosed with when I was very, very young, and how that's affected my life and the things that I've done about it. And there were a lot of really, really wonderful, very kind comments. Thank you for those. And there were a lot of questions as well. So I wanted to take a few minutes and answer some of those questions. So you're gonna join me while we do some chores around the ranch and I'll answer some of these questions that you had. First thing that I need to do today is I need to go get some hay. Horses need to eat. So we're gonna go run and get some hay real fast. Gonna get hay, gonna get hay. If you only knew how much money that I spend on hay for these animals, you'd throw up. Actually, before we get hay, I have some horse feed in the back of the truck that I need to drop off first, so we have room for one of these. I like to get those big, huge round bales, and so I can only fit one of those in my truck and have to clear it out. So we're gonna actually put some feed out for these horses right now. Hey, you guys hungry? Oh yeah, you can tell Holloway is. Hey pal, what's going on? What's happening? Oh yes. Hey, what's going on, buddy? Okay, you don't want to play, just want to eat. I get it. I've been there. Oh yeah, party time. Woohoo! So this is always what happens. Cora and Holloway are kind of the bosses of the herd, so they get to eat first, and these two just have to sit and wait. So I try to feed them separately. Yeah, see? Now these two little goobers get to eat some too. All right. Now we can actually go and get some hay. So I love this question, by the way. So this person says, I love this conversation. I'm a teacher in middle school and I want to engage students who are bored out of their mind. So many bright students neglected because they are the square peg. It is so hard in the virtual setting, especially with literature. Would love to hear more about what he thinks teachers can do. Maybe on Dave's channel. It's a great place. My brother-in-law, Dave, Frugal Fit Dad, is an educator by trade and he is incredible. So I'll take a stab at this. I'm not an expert on special education. I'm not an expert on anything but my own life and my own experience. I think this has largely changed since I was a kid and I was initially diagnosed. I mean, we're talking about like 25 years ago or more. And so I think the school systems and the teachers and the understanding of these learning disabilities have come really, really a long way. I think the term learning disability for some things like ADD or dyslexia even, I think is a total misnomer. They're just different ways of processing information, and people with ADD or dyslexia are actually better at processing certain types of information. We just don't do well in the traditional mold of schools. I had a couple of really excellent teachers that I don't know if they understood the problem consciously or if they just intuitively knew how to work with me. I couldn't really say, but I had a couple of teachers that were really, really good about finding things that I was interested in. And so you mentioned literature, and I didn't like to read most things because most things were really, really boring. And I thought that for sure until I read the book Hatchet as a young kid, and loved Hatchet, loved it, like the whole survival, and all he had is the hatchets, and I absolutely adored that book. And as I got older, I really loved Walden, which is kind of similar in concept. And so there were a couple of books that I absolutely devoured because the subject matter was really, really interesting to me. And so I think that's what you have to do a lot with these kids who have ADD, is you have to find a positive place to put the energy, because the energy and the intelligence is there. You just have to find where to put it so that it can be really, really productive and effective. And that's actually a lesson that I've learned that's helped me throughout my life, is understanding how to take the energy that I have and the ability to just absorb information and put that into a positive place. You just have to find the key. You know, for me, it was outdoor stuff. That wasn't the only thing that I was interested in, though. And so you just have to find the things that they're interested in and then give them the opportunity to really throw their energy into it. And then once you get it and you find the thing that gets the kid interested, be ready to pivot into something else pretty quickly, because they'll be ready to, you know, after they've really like devoured it, they'll be ready for something else. And so you got to have some other things that are ready. These kids will challenge you because they're not easy to teach, but you'll be amazed at the amount of information that they can actually absorb and really, really internalize. Not just memorize, but have it internalized and be able to call it up and use it throughout their entire lives. That would be my advice. I don't know how good that is. It's just my own thoughts on the matter. Okay, so this next question is, in Christine's video, she said you attended college. What did you major in, and overall, how was your experience in college? Really good question, actually. This is, you know, I'm trying to think of the right way to put this and make it in context so you understand. I better just tell the story. So I was diagnosed with ADD probably in the maybe second or third grade, something like that. The way that they dealt with that at the time was they put me on Ritalin. And so I was on Ritalin for a couple of years until actually I said I don't want to take it anymore because of what it did to me. And what it did to me is, when I was on Ritalin, I was focused, but there was no spark. There was no creativity to what I did. I could focus, but I wasn't interested in what I was doing. And so it dulled the whole world to me. I hated it. And so eventually I took it off. And in fact, there's pictures that I drew when I wasn't on Ritalin, and then pictures that I drew when I was on Ritalin. And when you look at them, it's kind of sad, actually. The ones without, they were, you know, super expressive and full of color and imagination. And the ones on Ritalin were basically just like stick figures, is all that they actually were. But I struggled all through school the whole time. It was just terrible. It was awful. I felt stupid because I wasn't successful. I felt stupid because sometimes my teachers indicated that to me. We were learning how to write they called it a how-to paper. And so what we were supposed to do as part of this project was we were supposed to go to the grocery store and pick out like fruits and vegetables and like make something with it. And then you were supposed to write a paper about how you made it. And so I bought all this stuff, and I made I made a man who was riding a rocket ship. That was what I made out of fruits and vegetables. And the only thing I really remember is I had to give a helmet to the man because riding a rocket ship is unsafe. And so it was a kiwi that I had cut in half and like hollowed out, and that was his helmet, like this furry helmet. So anyway, the class all got together and we started making our stuff, and I made it, and that part was so fun. And then I started to write, and I got so bored, and I think I wrote a little bit, and it you know, admittedly wasn't very good. And I remember my teacher, she came up to me and she yelled at me about how bad my paper was and how stupid, you know, the sentences that I wrote were, and literally just yelled and screamed at me. Now, to be fair, I'm sure she was really frustrated with me because she couldn't figure out how to get through to me and get me to do things the way she wanted me to. But as she screamed at me, I just broke down crying in middle class, and it was a really devastating, difficult time and moment for me. And that was sort of indicative of a lot of my public school system experience. It really, teachers being frustrated that they didn't know what to do with me, and me being frustrated because I wanted to be good. I wasn't a bad kid. I wanted to be good, but I couldn't get myself to do it. So I, you know, barely scraped by in school, and in a lot of cases didn't scrape by in school. And I just decided maybe I had to try college out just a little bit. And so I conned my way into a university, and they accepted me after, the applications and essays and stuff. And then I got like the catalog, which is like that thick, of all the classes that you could go to. And it's like, okay, so you go to like your math and your science and your, history and stuff like that. And I was like, ugh, this is going to be more of the same. Then I started flipping through more, and I was like, oh, you can take like judo classes? I didn't know you could do that. You could take a guitar class? What the heck? I took a class before I had like any kind of major, and I didn't have I didn't know what I was doing, but I think it was called political ideologies is what it was. And I fell in love. And so I ended up majoring in political science with an emphasis in international relations. Most of it was really, really easy, except for like the general education stuff that you just have to do. My major classes were easy, and they were easy because I loved them and they were really interesting to me. Just getting this round bale loaded up is my favorite part. My kids think this is the craziest thing. They get so freaked out when this thing gets loaded in the back. These things weigh about 1,000 pounds, 1,200 pounds, something like that, give or take. Ooh, ooh. Okay, I'm back home. We've got the hay. Now I need to unload the hay in the horse pen. I have a trick for this because I don't like getting in I can do this. I can roll that thing out of the back. But look, if you don't have to do that, don't do that, right? It's too much wear and tear on your body. We'll just say that. So what I like to do is I like to distract the horses with a little bit of grain over here, and then I go to the other side of the field, and I go I open the tailgate, go in reverse really fast, and slam on the brakes, and the momentum carries on that bale of hay, and it just rolls out the back. So let's do that real quick. And showtime. Sweet. Okay, is Steven's family homeschooling? Does his background with the subject affect how they deal with their own children? The quick answer is yes, it really does. I'm very, very sensitive to the way that my kids are performing in school, and what, more than that, like what is their experience with school and what is their experience with learning. What I really, really don't want is a situation where my children have like a love of learning beat out of them by the school system, which is something that happens frequently. We have homeschooled our kids in the past. We lived in a place in Idaho at one point where the school system was very, very bad. We just decided that my wife could provide a better education to our children than the school system could. My second oldest daughter was actually recently diagnosed with dyslexia. Initially when she first got the diagnosis, I cried. And I cried because I didn't want her to go through the same thing that I went through in school. And I was worried and I was scared for her. I didn't want the constant heartache of struggling in a school system and in a world that didn't understand her like I had. And so I was terrified for her, and it was very, very emotional for me. But I also got to sit down with her and say, hey, you're like me, right? We think about the world differently, and that's our superpower. And people who are dyslexic, they have superpowers. They're incredibly creative. Tons and tons of famous creative people who are artists and musicians and actors and authors. I take a really, really special note of my daughter with dyslexia to make sure that she's able to focus what her superpower is into things that'll be productive for her life. And the last question that I want to answer is kind of goes along. This is a good segue into it. And so it says, my 7-year-old son has ADHD and sounds a lot like your brother. I wonder what advice your brother would give to a mother and a child who's in the thick of it now that he's older. Gosh, that question flooded so many emotions into me. I'd love to hear what my mom would say about this, actually. And so maybe we'll have to get her one day to answer this question. But my advice to you is to understand that, first of all, that and you probably already know this, but first of all, understand this doesn't mean that your child is dumb. They're not dumb. They're not dumb at all. They're extremely sensitive to your input as a parent. And so you will set the tone for what this means for much of their life. And, you have the benefit now of lots and lots of years of research and understanding that we didn't really have when I was young. That doesn't make it any easier, by the way, because none of the systems have changed around this. So I would tell you to figure out how to focus their incredible ability into something positive. And so I made mention earlier about, finding a topic that's interesting to them and using that to teach them other things. And I think that's also true in your situation. So your child, your son, is going to be obsessed with certain things. Make sure they're the right things and make sure that the energy is used productively. So just as an example, maybe your son loves dinosaurs. There's a couple of different ways he could focus that energy. Maybe he wants to pretend to be a dinosaur and tear up his room at night, right? That's not a good way for that energy to be focused. But take him to the museum. Get him books. My dad knew that I loved like animals and bugs and, tadpoles and fish and frogs and stuff like that. So you know what he did? He got me a bug catching and science kit where it was basically like, like a little net and a little like jar that you could put the bug in, and you could like observe this bug and stuff like that. And then he got me a fishing pole and got me hooked on fishing because I love being near the water. And so every day after school, I would come home and I'd grab my fishing pole and go down to, the little fishing hole down the road from us. And I'd fish until dark every day. And that was a really positive use of my energy. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people in the same situation whose parents don't care about them the way that you clearly care about yours because you're asking this question. And those kids end up getting into a lot of trouble. They get into alcohol and drugs and, they get in trouble with the law and things like that because there's nowhere else for their energy to go. And so it ends up in really negative places. So find positive places for them to put that energy and use their interest, whatever that interest is, to drive the avenue that they put that energy into. So that would be some of my advice to you there. I think people with ADD or dyslexia or other learning disabilities also have to come to the realization, and you'll have to teach this to your son, that while your brain works differently and it doesn't always fit in, unfortunately, the rest of the world, for being blunt, doesn't really care. The people care, but the system of the way our whole world works doesn't really care. And so your responsibility as somebody with ADD or with one of these other learning disabilities, your responsibility is to figure out, how do I make this work for me? These people are smart. So you have to end up being smarter than your learning disability. So how do I use my superpower to be really, really productive and useful in society? And so you're going to have to teach your son to understand that concept, that just because he has this issue doesn't mean he's, devoid of any kind of responsibility for what he does. So you teach him that principle because that's really, really important. Ultimately, it'll be all up to him to find success. And so teach him that this day and age, you probably don't get to use that crutch past, maybe even into college you get to use it, but past that, nobody cares anymore. Like, your employer does not care. Your customers don't care. And it's not because they don't care about you. It's just the way the world works. And then the last thing that I would tell you is just love them. Just love them. And that's an easy, assignment to give to a parent, to love your child. It's easy to do most of the time. Sometimes it's hard. But just love him and understand that he's trying. Because you don't fully grasp what he's going through, because you haven't experienced it yourself, you're going to be lost. I remember when I first got diagnosed, my old man sat down with me and he said, "Hey, I understand you have this learning disability." And he admitted to me right then and there, I'm like in the second grade or something, and he said, "I don't understand it. I don't get it. I don't understand what you're going through. I don't understand really even how to help you, but I'm going to do everything in my power to stack the odds in your favor." And he was like, "And you're going to have to be patient with me because I don't know how to do that yet, but we'll figure it out together. And so make sure your son gets that too, that you're going to figure it out together, that you're going to work together until he figures out how to control his ADD and to control the things that he can control to be successful. I hope that's helpful. I don't know if it is. Again, I am not a therapist or a psychologist or psychiatrist or have any type of degree or special knowledge on this topic other than I've lived with it. That's the only special knowledge that I have on it. I haven't even read books and stuff on it, to be honest. So take everything that I said with a grain of salt, but I really, really hope that helps. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you next time on Typically Hazardous.